Hello YouTube, it's Naini here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we are doing another What Talk episode. Today we're going to be talking about episode 3 of the TV show, and yes, I know I'm late. The TV show's been over for a little bit now, and it's kind of sucks, but it's just how it ended up being. I had to take a break from, making videos because I had to go to Mexico, and here we are. So, yeah, episode 3, it's been a while since I talked about the show. I actually just finished watching it with my family the other day. We watched it in Spanish. And I have a lot of feelings about the show, but I wanted to talk about each episode separately, and then I'll do a kind of series review at the end, and we'll talk about it then. But it's kind of an interesting bit of feelings that I have for the show. But let's talk about episode 3 here. The chapter or the episode is called The Place of Safety, or A Place of Safety, and it's pretty interesting. It starts with a flashback of Nynaeve on Winter's Night, or Beltane, or whatever it's called, when the Trollocs attack Emond's Field, the two rivers, right? And how she manages to escape. Very interesting. I really like that all of the characters, both the female and the male characters, have this very kind of powerful autonomy to them. Well, as powerful of an autonomy as you can in a show where everything is dictated by this pattern that this wheel weaves, right? I mean to say is that I really like that, Nynaeve and Gwen both have the ability and the, physical prowess to deal with stuff on their own. They don't have to wait on the guys to save them or anything. And I really like that. I think it's very nice. And it's mostly because it's really subtle. It doesn't seem over the top. It seems like, yeah, they're from a village. They would, of course, hunt and do all of this stuff the same way everyone else does in the village. Of course, they'd have the ability to, do these things that all the other people in the village would. And it doesn't seem ridiculous because, in a lot of action TV shows, when they have like a femme fatale character, she's taking punches the same way another guy is. And it's like, lady, you're like 5 feet tall and this guy's like 7 feet tall and he's like beating the shit out of you. There's no way that you would like be able to hold out against all of them, right? So I think that it feels a little bit more viable in this case, and I really like that. I think it's very interesting. We also got this kind of scene where they see this dragon fang, the male version of the Aes Sedai flame, somewhere on the ground when the Trollocs are killed. When the Trolloc is killed in the pool, I think it's very interesting. I don't understand why they're associating the dragon's fang with Trollocs and the Dark One, because my understanding is that that's not true. Like, that's not really the case. I mean, people do it this way, but that's not how it works. Like, the Trollocs would not be okay with using that symbolism, because they would be against it, right? Because Aes Sedai, both sides, are against the Trollocs, so it would make sense that they wouldn't use the Dragon's Fang. So I don't know why they're doing that. I guess they just want to have like, hey, male side bad, female side good, and making it as clear as possible. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It really doesn't affect anything at all, but I thought it was cool. Yeah, and then back to Naini and Land, and Nynaeve wants to go after her friends. She's talking to Land, and she's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna kill you. What's going on here?" We get to see a bit of vulnerability from Land, which I think is really good. I actually really like the choices they've made with Land in the TV show by not making him this like hyper stoic person like in the books, because in the books we understand that Land is hyper stoic on the outside, but we know that on the inside he's not, because we can kind of see partially what he's seeing from the narrator's perspective. But in a TV show that wouldn't really work because we're not inside anyone's mind, right? So I think that making Land less stoic and a little bit more kind of like personable is a really good choice. And I really like that we get to see this vulnerability from Land right now, because it works really nicely for his character. And he plays Nynaeve to help Moraine, because hey, she's basically the only person around that can help her. And then they have this little standoff thing where like Nynaeve is holding a Trolloc knife up to Land. He's like, hey, you're not going to kill me. He kind of underestimates her. And she definitely tries to go kill him. And he's super impressed by that. And I think that's a very nice scene that kind of has this inklings of the romance that is supposed to happen between Nynaeve and Land. And I thought it was really good. I actually really liked it. So good stuff there. I really like the characterization between these two. I think it works really nicely. And yes, there's a lot of like stolen glances and stuff like that maybe don't work as well in television as they do in the books, but I think it's nicely done, so I like that a lot. Well done there. And then we get to see a different scene where Rand and Matt are, talking. And Rand is yelling like a psycho, asking where, Egwene and Perrin are. And they have a discussion there. And Matt's like, hey, man, if you're going to scream like crazy, people are going to find us. This is not a good idea. We need to go find them ourselves in a more kind of like low-key kind of way, right? And so they head off walking. They basically are on different, sides of this. Rand wants to save Egwene and Perrin, and Matt is like, no, they're dead. We want to go home, which I think is interesting. I really think that they made Matt feel a lot more selfish in the books. In the TV show than in the books. But in the books, he doesn't really have this kind of like responsibility to his little sisters that he does in the TV show. And I think that they made him more selfish, but at the same time made it more logical, because they added this kind of like thing where like, hey man, you're the only one that can take care of your sisters. You know, go do that. But you're out here having an adventure with your friends kind of thing, right? So I thought it was interesting. I am generally liking Matt's characterization quite a bit more than when I read the books, because, Matt doesn't really become an interesting character or a good character until about the end of book 3. I like Matt since the beginning of the show, because I very much enjoy his quippy nature and the fun kind of like bits of things he says. But I don't know. It's kind of confusing. I'm not really sure how I feel about a lot of these characters very much, especially now that I know the end. So far, I'm trying to kind of stay away from that, but it's kind of interesting to see how it goes. Then Perrin and Egwene are in a desert. I think it's actually a steppe, not a desert, but basically ends up being the same thing. There's wolves. Perrin is freaking out, and Egwene channels in order to heat up some wood in order to have a fire. Pretty sure this was taken basically exactly from the books, which I liked a lot. I thought it was really nicely done. And, they have this chat, and then they want to go to the White Tower, but they have to cross this steppe that is very cold and stuff like that. And, of course, they're probably not going to be able to make it, but they're going to try to go there. This would be sometime in this episode would be when Elias, the wolf guy, shows up, but he doesn't, which kind of sucks. But I'm guessing they're going to introduce him or someone else that has similar situations happening, different similar powers at the beginning of season 2, because that would work really nicely. They're probably going to combine, the tracker guy from Faldara with Elias. I think that would work really nicely. Combine this sense of danger with these wolf people. So probably going to be what happens there. And then and then Nynaeve is tied to a tree, which is pretty funny. And Lan is trying to get her to heal Moraine. Nynaeve doesn't really want to, unless, she gets answers. And he asks for Nynaeve's help. They have this negotiation going on, and then they go gather some plants. And, they do some healing stuff. Moraine has like a big pus-filled thing on her chest. And Nynaeve pops it, which is kind of disgusting. And then we get some kind of like warder lore here. We talk about how Lan is connected to Moraine. He probably feels what Moraine feels, and so he should be prepared for the pain that's going to come. And I thought it was pretty interesting, pretty good. I like how they kind of combine that. And we have this interesting scene where Nynaeve plays word games with Lan, basically. She's like, you can ask, and then he asks her, and then she's like, I never said I was going to answer. Which very, very much seems like an Aes Sedai thing to do, because, the first 2 episodes establish Aes Sedai as people that say the truth, but don't necessarily tell you the truth you want to hear. And, of course, they're people that are very mindful of the way they can affect things by saying certain things in a certain way. And I think it's very nicely done. I like this little bit of foreshadowing here, because, yes, Nynaeve and Egwene are going to be Aes Sedai, but, Nynaeve doesn't want to be, but she basically has been one forever. It's very interesting kind of a way to highlight that. So I like that a lot. That was really good. And then scene shift, Perrin is dreaming. He has a sequence where he sees a wolf eating Lila, which is kind of gory, kind of horrible. And then the Dark One shows up. The Dark One is kind of interesting. I don't know why they gave him like a Darth Vader face. Not like a mask. I'm talking about like Darth Vader when he takes off the mask and he just looks like, a burnt person. But I thought it was interesting. And then he wakes up and the wolves lead them towards the path so that they can find the Tinkers. So I thought it was pretty cool. Then we get to see Matt and Rand walking, and then they eventually get to a mining town. I don't know what mining town this is, but basically this town serves as a single town to represent all of the towns that they go through in order to get to Camelin in the book. However, they're not actually going to Camelin, they're going straight to Tarvalin, which is kind of an interesting change here, so I'm curious to see how that goes. What's it called? They get to this town, and then they meet Tom after they walk into a bar. Again, interesting. I think it would have been better if Tom was, straight up at the beginning. However, introducing his character would have taken away time from, the stuff that happened at Beltane. And so I understand they added him in later. However, I feel like his connection to the boys is a lot stronger if he was there from the beginning. So, I don't know. Interesting kind of stuff there. He sings a cool song about the Dragon Reborn. It's kind of interesting. He's supposed to be a Glee man. The first song he sings is a sad one, and everyone's kind of like messed up by it. So I thought it was kind of funny, interesting choice there. I feel like this show is missing quite a bit of music in terms of like people singing, but I think that the two songs that they have added in are very, very good in terms of lore building. So I like that a lot. So I'm okay with that. And then they have this whole situation going in here where it's interwoven. You have Matt and Rand having this situation where they're kind of at the bar, and then they end up meeting a dark friend, which is what happens in the books in one of the towns. And then at the same time you have Perrin and Gwen meeting the Tinkers and explaining all of the stuff about the Tuathan and the song and how they have to do this and the way of the leaf and all of this stuff. And they get some food, and they have this interesting change there where Egwene and Perrin don't know about the Tinkers, but in the books they clearly knew who the Tinkers were, and they clearly had this negative association with the Tinkers. And I don't understand why, because I remember very clearly Perrin was like, they say all these bad things about the Tinkers, but they're actually very good at fixing things, and he respected them in like a professional capacity. So I'm curious to see why they changed that. I'm pretty sure it was just so that they could introduce the lore of the Tinkers, because in a TV show you can't hear what the characters are thinking, so a lot of the exposition has to be done through dialogue, and so you can't have them knowing the Tinkers beforehand if you want to explain what the Tinkers are. So I think that's why that worked that way. It's a kind of weird change, but it's a change that makes sense because they have to adapt it to this different medium, so I'm okay with it. Back to Rand and Matt, and Matt has kind of gone away. Donna and Rand are talking, and then it switched to Lan and Moraine, where Nynaeve is healing Moraine as she kind of whimpers and has this like fever dream about Swan Sanche. Very interesting kind of name drop there, because of course in the later episodes we get to see who she is, and of course it's the Amerlin seat, so pretty interesting there. And they eventually find some Aes Sedai, which is really good. And then back to Matt and Rand, where Matt is trying to steal from the Aiel. Tom shows up. He's like, "Hey, boy, what are you doing here?" And they have a conversation. And then Tom's like, "Huh? You mentioned something about Trollocs, but how did a boy from Two Rivers fight some Trollocs, right?" And we get this whole kind of thing about like, "Hey, man, the only way I could tell you where you were from is because you have an accent and you dress this certain way. This is the same thing that applies to this Aiel guy." And, we get an explanation about what Aiel are. Red hair and blue eyes. Oh my god, Rand is like that. What's going on here? Very interesting kind of stuff there. And then Tom is a very cool character. I like him a lot. And I think he has an interesting kind of like little theme that comes in when he steps up. It's a very kind of Western theme. I liked it a lot. I thought it was cool. And then Rand and Donna again are kind of talking, and then it turns out that she's a dark friend, and now he's fighting her and being chased around town as Matt and Tom are burying this Aiel guy. And then they head back into town, bump into Crazy Chase, and Rand breaks this door. He leaves, and then Donna talks to Rand and Matt about how there's 5 of them, the 5th one being Nynaeve, but Matt and Rand don't know that she's alive, so they're curious to see who this person is. And then Tom saves them by shooting a not shooting, sorry, throwing a knife through her face. Very interesting, kind of powerful scene there. Very kind of gory. The show is a lot gorier than you would think from reading the books, but however, the books are as gory. They just explain it in different ways. Usually when, Rand is trying to kill someone, it's a very kind of poetic sword stance thing instead of like, hey, he just stabbed him and the dude started bleeding out kind of thing. Very interesting. And then Tom saves them and they're heading east. So they keep heading east. The whole show is basically, we have to go as east as possible and then further east because we have to go do something else, right? So interesting stuff there. And then finally, the last scene is Land, Nynaeve, and Moiraine finally catching up to some Aes Sedai, to Leandrin specifically. And Leandrin's like, oh, hey, Moiraine, how's it going? Very kind of shitty person there. And she's like, oh, did you know we caught the dragon and his name is Logain? And we get to see Alvaro Morte and his Logain get up kind of sitting in a cage. Very cool stuff. Very interesting. Very enjoyable. I thought this episode was really great. Generally, still haven't had too many issues with the way they choose to adapt scenes. So I'm okay with it. There's really nothing wrong here. I'm liking that they're combining the Logain to Tarvalin storyline with the beginning of the Eye of the World. I think it makes sense. I don't remember ever reading about how they captured Logain, but I've only read the first 3 books. I haven't read the prequel. I haven't read past the end of the 3rd book, The Dragon Reborn. So it probably has happened in the book somewhere. I just don't know it because I haven't read that many of them. But so far, everything makes sense. Everything is good. And I think episode 4 is where it starts to deviate a lot. And some of the stuff that they choose to do doesn't really make sense to me. Or it does make sense, but I think that they chose wrong. But I don't really have any, major issues. Like, it's not like I'm going to, go crazy on the internet and, start tweeting angrily and stuff and saying Rafe Judkins did a bad job or anything, because I think he did a pretty good job generally. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this episode. There really hasn't been as much to talk about, I guess, as there was in the previous ones, but I don't know. Anyway, see you guys.